بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه المحرزين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Hey, welcome to lesson 2. Before we start the lesson, let's do a brief recap of what we learned in lesson 1. What we learned there was that Arabic is a language that's read from right to left. All the letters in a word are connected together and words are separated by a gap. Now, not all letters can connect to the letter after them, so what happens is in the middle of the word you might have a little pause. You have to lift your pen in order to write, and this creates cursive sequences in a word. Now, Arabic has 29 letters. The vowels are not part of the alphabet. They are actually marks on top or underneath a letter. And the letters, of course, just as in English, correspond to sounds. For example, the Arabic letter ba corresponds to the sound b, just like the English letter b corresponds to that sound. While English has 26 letters in the alphabet, Arabic has 29, and we haven't seen any of those letters, nor have we seen any of the vowels, the marks on top or underneath the letters. So let's get started by looking at the first letter in lesson 2. The letter we're going to look at today in this lesson is the letter Aleph. Aleph is a straight vertical line, goes like this from top to bottom. What does it sound like? Actually, Aleph goes against the rules that we just mentioned and that we learned in the previous lesson. Aleph doesn't have a sound of its own. Its purpose in the language is to elongate the sound. So if you have a sequence B, A, Ba, Alif is going to come along and change it to from Ba to Ba. Notice the addition of the A here. It elongates the A vowel in Arabic. So let's look into this in more detail. Notice I have two Arabic words here. Don't concentrate on the Arabic words. The only reason I have them here is to show you that it's the same word, except that the second one has an addition of an alif here, somewhere in the middle of the word. That's all I want you to notice. And in the corresponding English transliteration, there's a corresponding A there to indicate the addition of the alif. But otherwise, the two words are the same. So we want to compare how they sound. The first one, let's pronounce it. It's ka, da, ba. The second one, however, is not ka, da, ba. It's ka, da, ba. Now notice the difference. Kataba versus kataba. Kataba, kataba. Kataba, kataba. Kataba, kataba. Notice the a sound. It sounds like the a in fashion or bat. Now, Alif has two slightly different sounds, and no one's going to tell you this because they're so the difference between the two sounds is so slight. It's so minute. The other sound that Alif has is not a but aw, as in the aw in father. That happens when you have a very heavy letter before the Alif. The letter before the Alif here is K, so K Alif makes ka. Ka. K is a very light letter. Now, if you have a heavy letter like Lod, which we haven't looked at in the Arabic language, Lod, that's a very heavy letter. And if you have an alif after that, the alif sounds very, very heavy. Aw, law, law. So a and aw. You don't have to know right now when to use which sound. In fact, you almost never have to know because it's so natural. You're just going to pick it up naturally, so don't even worry about it. I just want you to be aware that there are those two sounds. Now, when you transliterate alif into English, in other words, when you try to write the corresponding English for the alif, it's two A's, as you see here. So ga, that's two A's. And some people write it just with one A. Now that's confusing because how do you know that's an alif and not just an A vowel? Like ga, how do you know it's ga and not ga? That's confusing. So when you do it, I want you to use two A's. Okay, now if I pronounce getaba versus gataba very quickly, like I just did there, getaba, gataba, getaba, gataba, getaba, gataba, it's very hard to detect the alif because you might be looking for a stretch. Getaba, gataba. I've exaggerated there. I exaggerated it there, so it's very easy to tell that there's an alif there. But if I don't exaggerate it, it's very hard to tell. Gataba, gataba. What you should look for is not the stretch, but the ah sound. Ah, like in fashion. Gataba, gataba. as opposed to the sound. Kataba, kataba. Okay, so kataba versus kataba. Now let's look at another example. Again, don't concentrate on the Arabic here. This is just here to note that there's an addition of an alif here. Otherwise, these two words are the same. And this addition of the alif in the Arabic corresponds to an addition of an a in the English transliteration. Now repeat after me. Sa, ja, da. Sa, ja, da. And this word down here, similarly, is sa, ja, da. Sa, ja, da. Notice the elongation of da at the end. It's not sajada, it's sajada. Not only is it elongated, but it's not an sound, it's an a sound. Versus a. As in fashion. Now the reason I gave two examples is to show you an example of alif at the end of a word as well. When alif is at the end of a word, it's very hard to detect. When it's somewhere in the middle, it's not that hard, like kataba and kataba. Even if I don't exaggerate it, kataba, 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 kataba. It's still pretty easy to detect. You just need some practice. When it's at the end of a word, however, it's a bit more difficult to detect, even for an Arab. So sajada and sajada, if I don't exaggerate the alif at the end, the two words will sound very similar. Watch this. Sajada, 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 sajada. If I'm speaking an entire sentence, that might be very hard to detect. And that's not unusual. Even Arabs have a hard time with that. It's just, you get used to it based on context. So let's read this sentence. I'm going to read it, and you follow along. And I just want you to notice, when I get to the alifs, notice me pronouncing the alifs. The alifs are highlighted in yellow here. So let's get started. وَإِنِّي حَشَوْتُ النَّارَ فِي فُؤَادِكَ. Notice when I got here, I said nara. I didn't say nara, I said nara. Notice when I got here, I didn't say fu'adika, I said fu'adika. And notice when I got at the end, I didn't say dika, I said dika. Okay? Let me do it again, just a little bit faster. Now, look for the elongation of the a sound, as well as the a in fashion, as opposed to the sound. وَإِنِّي حَشَوْتُ النَّارَ فِي فُؤَادِكَ. That's what you're looking for. And let me go even faster, at normal speed in fact. وَإِنِّي حَشَوْتُ النَّارَ فِي فُؤَادِكَ. Okay? Let's do a few examples. I'm going to say a word, and I want you to pause the recording, pause the video, and I want you to tell me how many alifs you heard. And resume the video, and I'm going to give you the answer. Okay? First one. فاعل فاعل فاعل. This one has one alif. Notice, I didn't say fa'il, fa'il. That's not what I said. I said fa'il, the a sound, plus the elongation. Fa'il. Okay? Second one. Ulya, ulya, ulya. How many does this one have? This one also has one. Notice I didn't say ulya. The alif is at the end, and I didn't say ulya. I said ulya. There was an elongation, plus you should notice the sound as in fashion. Ulya. Third one. ضابطاني ضابطاني ضابطاني. How many does this one have? This one has two. ضا, that's one. ضابطاني. ضا, one. بطا, two. Ni. Now notice this one is not like the a as in fashion. It's more like the a as in father, because the la, the b sound before the alif here, is a very heavy sound, and it turns the alif from a to a. Okay, but it's still an alif. Notice the elongation and notice the a sound. Now also in tani, labi tani, o is also a very heavy sound in the Arabic language, and it causes the alif to go from a to a as well. So notice the ah sound and also notice the elongation. ضابطان. I didn't say ضابطني. ضابطني would have been no alifs. ضابطني. But I said ضابطاني. Okay? Fourth one. Now these ones will go a little bit faster. مرآة. 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 How many does that one have? It has one. مرآة. You see that? مرآة. There it is. Fifth one. لم يحافظا. لم يحافظا. لم يحافظا. So how many alifs were in here? Two. لم يحا. That's one. فضا. And one at the end. لم يحافظا. Notice I didn't say لم يحافظا. If I said لم يحافظا, there would have been no alifs. But I said لم يحافظا. So there are two. Sixth one. وليال عشر. وليال عشر. وليال عشر. There was one alif in here. Notice وليال عشر. You're looking for the stretch ليال as well as the sound as in fashion. Fashion. ليال. Okay. Or the sound. In this case there was no sound as in father. ليال. Notice I didn't say وليال. If there was no alif, just the a sound by itself, it would have been layalin. Okay, the a sound unstretched. But because it's stretched, it's not layalin, it's layalin. Okay, let's move on to the seventh one, and let's speak more naturally now, even faster. Sadaqa. 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 How many does this one have? This is a trick question actually. There is 0 in this one. Sadaqa. If there was an alif after the sa, it would have been sadaqa. Sadaqa. If there was an alif after the da, it would have been sadaqa. Sadaqa. If there was an alif after the qa sound, it would have been sadaqa. Sadaqa. But it was none of those. It was just sadaqa. Notice, no elongation and no or sound. Let's move on to the eighth one. Jamal. Gamal. Gamal. This one has one. Notice I said Gamal. There's a stretch there. And there's an sound. Gamal. If there was no alif, it would have been Gamal. Gamal. But it's Gamal. Okay, final one. Now this is a long word. لا يفعلناني. لا يفعلناني. لا يفعلناني. Notice there's one alif in here. It's actually very obvious. It's near the end. لا يفعلناني. There it is. Nani. You see that? And there is no alif anywhere else in the word. La. Notice it's لا يفعلناني. It's not لا يفعلناني. Okay? Now let's talk about how you write alif. Now remember we said that there are 6 or 7 letters in the Arabic alphabet that cannot connect to the letter after them. Even if they want to connect, because they're in the same word, they should connect to the letter after them. But they can't do it. And the reason they can't do it is because if we do that, it's gonna cause mass confusion. It's gonna look like another letter. Okay, so alif happens to be one of those letters. It cannot connect to the letter after it. Therefore, there is no such thing as alif being in the beginning of a sequence, because you can't have anything after it. So how can it be at the beginning? Nor can it be in the middle, because if you're in the middle, that implies that there's something after you, and there can't be anything after alif. It has to break the sequence. Okay, so alif, when we talk about alif, we only talk about it being by itself or at the end of a word. When you write alif by itself, you draw a straight vertical line from top to bottom, and it rests on the line. When you write on a line, the alif is going to rest on top of the line, like that. Now alif at the end of a word, it's not drawn from top to bottom. Remember, Arabic is written from right to left. So what you're going to be doing is coming in from a letter that you've just finished, come into the alif, go from bottom to top, and break the sequence like that. This is just a connection line with another letter. So this could be, I could be drawing ba, for example. We haven't seen this letter, but this letter is ba. It's stop writing the ba, continue on into the alif like so. Ba alif. Ba. Like that. Okay, so let's do some practice. Now, alif by itself, try it from top to bottom, rest on the line. Top to bottom, rest on the line. Okay? Now, this is the same thing. The only difference is that in the same word, we have another letter after it. So this letter happens to be lam, al. Okay, so we just write it like this. Okay, pretty simple. Now, this is alif at the end of a sequence. It's in the middle of a word, remember, but at the end of a sequence. This letter is ba, then the alif, then the ba. Bab. Bab means door, roughly speaking. Ba. Finish the ba, come into the alif, bottom to top. Drop my pen and continue on. Okay, like that. Now, just some practice here. Bab, which we've just done, roughly means door, like so. Kitab. Kitab means book. See? Finish the letter da, go into the alif like that. Break the sequence and go on to write the next letter. Last word here is baita. Finish this letter here. Go into the alif, bottom to top, and finish. Baita. Baita is a variation of the word bait, which means house. Okay? Now, a special case. The letter lam, which of course we haven't seen yet, when alif comes after the letter lam, it's written in a special way. Notice here, it's not a straight vertical line. It's sort of slanted, like so. That's the alif. It's slanted like that. Now, different people write this differently. The way I write it is like so. I write the lam, and then I drop my pen, I lift it up, and then I go back to write the alif like so. That's how I write the combination lam alif. Now, other people do it differently. They might do it like something like this, I don't know. But I feel most comfortable doing it like this. Lifting my pen. Okay? So let's just practice with another word. La means no, by the way. Kaf, that letter. Write the lam. I'm going fast because we haven't seen these letters. I don't want you to worry about these letters. What I want you to worry about is the slant of the alif here. Like so. Lift my pen, write the ba. Kilab. Kilab is plural of kalb. It means dogs. And then this word here, it's either kila or kalla, depending on how you vowel it. Kalla means never, kila means both. Remember the book and the bike example? The book is on the table versus the bike is on the table. There we go. So just practice. In the exercises, you will be asked to identify alifs, to whether they're in their usual form, the straight vertical line, or whether they're in this lam alif form. We call this sequence lam alif because it's the letter lam followed by the letter alif. So, as you would expect, it's called lam alif. Okay, but in the exercises, you're going to be asked, like I said, to identify alifs. Now, it's very easy, especially for a beginner, to confuse alif with certain other letters. Why? Because certain other letters have a straight vertical line as part of their body. So what we're going to do is we're just going to very briefly go through some other letters that have a vertical line as part of their body. And we're going to see how they're different from alif. Okay, just so you can do the exercises. Normally, we don't want to concentrate too much on these other letters because we're not studying them. When the time comes, we will study them, but that's not what we're doing right now. Just want to help you differentiate. So these first two letters, okay, they have a vertical line, as you see here and here. Okay, but they also have a loop underneath that line. So let that loop help you rule out these letters when you see them. They're not alifs because they have this loop. They look like golf clubs. Okay. Next letter is kaf. Actually, don't even worry about what the letter is called. Again, we're not concentrating on this letter. we're just noticing that it has a straight vertical line here. But it's easily differentiable from alif, again, because it's not just a straight line. It has these accessories around it. Okay? These accessories around it. Okay? And this really wide loop plus this little squiggle here. Okay? So it's pretty easy to differentiate. Now the difficult one actually is lam. This letter. It has a straight vertical line, and then it has a loop at the end. It looks like the letter J backwards. Just like Gaf looks like the letter L backwards. So this looks like the letter J backwards. So when it's by itself and when it's at the end of a sequence, as in here, it's very easy to differentiate. You just look for the loop. Now the real trick is these two cases. When lam is at the beginning or middle of a sequence, in the beginning or middle, it looks very, very much like alif. But notice, alif doesn't exist in the beginning or middle of a sequence. So there's no confusion. If you see this vertical line at the beginning or middle of a sequence, meaning if there's a letter after it, connected to it, it can't be an alif because alif cannot connect to the letter after it. Okay? Now another thing to note is that alif sometimes has this little squiggle. Squiggle is called a hamza, and sometimes it's above the alif and sometimes it's underneath the alif. Whenever you see this letter is not an alif, okay? This is just hamza, the letter hamza, sitting on or under the seat of alif. We call this hamza on the seat of alif. Okay, it's not alif, it is the letter hamza. Let's do some exercises. Let's try to identify where we see alifs. So what we're going to do first of all is look for vertical lines. When we see a vertical line, we're going to try to rule out some of the letters that we've seen. Maybe it's not an alif, okay? Just because it's a vertical line doesn't mean it's an alif. So step 1, look for vertical lines. Step 2, rule out any other letters that have vertical lines. Okay, so I see a vertical line here. Is that an alif? Yes, yes it is. I see somewhat of a vertical line here, but it's not really vertical. And it has these accessories, this straight line up here, right? So it's not an alif. Moving on, I see another vertical line here. Is that an alif? Yes, it is. Now I see another vertical line here. Is that an alif? No, because it's connecting to the letter after it. The connection line here is actually drawn very wide, I guess to make the word longer. But this is not an alif because it connects to the letter after it. Next example. Now we're going to look, let me change the color of my pen so we have better contrast. I'm going to choose red. Okay, so we're looking at this word now and we have, let's see, how many vertical lines do we have? Oh, here's one. Is that an alif? No. Why? Because it's connecting to the letter after it. It can't be an alif. But you've seen this sequence before. This sequence is lam alif. It's this. Right? It's lam alif. So this second letter here, that's an alif. Next example. Do we see any vertical lines here? Actually, there is one. There's a vertical line there. But remember, it has this loop underneath it. There's a loop underneath it. That's part of the letter. This letter is not alif. It's actually the letter tha, the one that looks like a golf club. Now, let's look at the bottom line here. I see a vertical line here. It doesn't have any accessories. It doesn't have that hamza mark on top or underneath it. It's not connected to the letter after it. No other accessories. It's a perfect candidate for alif. Okay. Any other vertical lines? Yes, I see a vertical line here. Does it connect to a letter after it? No. Does it have any accessories? Any hamzas or anything like that? No. So this is a perfect candidate for alif. Now you notice it does have this. That's actually a vowel mark, and we'll talk about that later. Final example. Let's look at this. Does this have any vertical lines? Don't see any in the first line. Any vertical lines here? I see a vertical line here. Does it connect to the letter after it? Nope. Does it have any accessories? Well, it does have this. That's the Hamza on top of it. It's written in a funny way. It's a different font, so it's written sort of off to the side, and the Hamza is a little more squiggly than usual, just because it's a different font. Just like in English, you have Times New Roman versus Arial versus all those fonts. So it's slightly different, but essentially it's just it is an alif with a Hamza on top. So that's not a candidate. That letter is Hamza. It's not an alif. Let's keep going. Do we see any other vertical lines? I see a vertical line here. It doesn't connect to any letters, any letter after it. It doesn't have any hamzas or other accessories. It looks like a perfect candidate. Now I see another vertical line, somewhat vertical, here, but it connects to the letter after it, so that's a no-go. And moving on, I see another vertical line. It doesn't connect to the letter after it. It doesn't have any accessories, no hamzas or anything like that, so that looks like an alif to me. It does connect to the letter before it, but remember, that's every single letter in the alphabet does connect to the letter before it. That's not a question. The question is, does it connect to the letter after? Okay? So this is our benchmark. As you can see, we've highlighted all the alifs. The only letter we've covered, or the only vowel we've covered, is alif. So the alifs have been highlighted. And as you can see, we have a ways to go, but inshallah we will get there.